I don't have a supreme confidence, I don't believe. Every job that I've ever taken, I thought I could do.
A Hollywood veteran, an Oscar-winning actor.
I really didn't expect to win. I can't say that I expected to lose, but I'm sure I didn't expect to win.
Don Ameche looks back on his long and successful movie career with Professor Richard Brown.
So far, in a way, the greatest director I ever had was Ansnovich.
Reflections on the silver screen, Don Ameche, next on AMC.
I made two terrible mistakes in my life, in pictures I'm talking about. And one was the first person MCA ever asked to represent was me. And my agent, a man by the name of George Frank, I liked a lot, and he liked me a lot, but he had just bought a new big home, and he was in drastic debt over the home. And Lou Wasserman was the guy that made the offer, and they offered him $75,000. And then the next horrible judgment that I made was after Heaven Can Wait in 1945, when my last year was coming up on my contract. Zanuck called me in. I was the second highest paid actor, so I'm told, at that time in the town, and he offered me to not give me a raise, but to stay at the same salary for 3 straight years with no options. And there was no one, because Ty was in the Army, you know, there was no one, or in the Navy, and there was no one on the lot. And because, again, George and I talked it over, and we thought that we could pick scripts better than Zanuck. Well, now you can think what idiotic thinking that was, or just think what my career would have been, because from 1945, maybe 1949, there was no more work for me at all out there. I had made I think three pictures, maybe 4, none a total bust, but not one a big hit. So by 1949, there was no more work for me out there.
You have literally 2 distinct careers.
Yes.
One is a leading man, in which you basically carried the film. You were the box office draw, you were the star. And then, years later, you hadn't worked for, I don't know, 10, 15 years in this business?
There were 2 periods of 12 years where I never made a picture.
Now, it was John Landis, really, in this section, who went to you for Trading Places.
No, the whole story of that was Ray Milland was signed to do the picture, and he couldn't pass the physical. So this is how come this sequence of events was Thursday. They called me Thursday, and said, could I come in and meet the producer of the show on at 10 o'clock on Friday morning? And I said, sure. And I went in, I saw producer, and he gave me the script to read, and I went to a friend's house and read the script, called him about 3 hours later, and I said, yeah, just fine by me. So my agent at that time, Tom Corman, called me a short while later, and he said, they want you, but they're not willing to pay you what even Ray Milland was getting, and which was $100,000, but was what Ray was getting. And Tom said, he says, do you think we ought to take it? And I said, God, I haven't worked for 12 years. He says, what's the sense in settling for anything now? I said, no. So I went to dinner at Mommy's Own. Yeah, go for it, is right. I went to Mommy's Own that night, and he called me, and he said, they've agreed to everything. Can you leave Sunday? This is Friday night. I said, sure, I can leave Sunday.
Put the Duke Brothers seats on the exchange up for sale at once. Seize all assets of Duke and Duke Commodities Brokers, as well as all personal holdings of Randolph and Mortimer Duke.
My God, we're ruined.
This is an outrage. I demand an investigation. You can't sell our seats. A Duke has been sitting on this exchange since it was founded. We founded this exchange. It's ours. It belongs to us.
My God.
Mortimer, your brother's not well. We better call an ambulance.
Fuck him. Now you listen to me. I want trading reopened right now. Get those brokers back in here. Turn those machines back on.
John was so wonderful to me in that picture. He was wonderful to everybody. With all my heart, I believe, and I think I'm allowed to say something like this. Eddie Murphy, Dan Aykroyd, and Jamie Lee Curtis will never, ever be as good again as they were in Trading Places. The opportunity that they had to show whether or not they could act or not was so incredible because you had two distinct people on all three characters. They had to go through this transition from who that bum was of Eddie Murphy to the guy in the middle of the script who they start putting cigarette butts out on his sofa. He couldn't stand that. And then to the end, when he's a very rich man and he gets even with the other two. And Aykroyd was the same way. Aykroyd went from here to that snob, down to a wonderful human being. And Jamie Lee Curtis, was the prostitute in the thing.
Yeah.
John is a wonderful, wonderful human being, first of all, and secondly, a wonderful director.
You talk with such affection about John Landis.
Oh, I do. To this day, I still am very close to him.
You've worked now, over the last few years, you've worked steadily with several really fine contemporary directors, including Ron Howard, Dan Petrie, John Landis. I'm curious as to whether these contemporary directors work differently from the Lubitschs and all of those people who you worked with early in your career. Also, great directors in their style, but has the style of directing, has the way people work on the set changed over the last 30, 40 years?
No, not the way they work, but, and I'm not belittling John at all, but so far and away the greatest director I ever had was Ernst Lubitsch. Far, far, far and away. And if you think of the legacy that he left, pictures with Jeanette MacDonald and Chevalier, the light musical type pictures, to Heaven Can Wait, and the story of Heaven Can Wait, and To Be or Not to Be with Jack Benny, Shop Around the Corner with Jimmy Stewart, Ninotchka with Greta Garbo, just this incredible assemblage of different kinds of story content pictures that he made. By the way, Gene Tierney and myself both had to test before he would okay us to play the parts in Heaven Can Wait, and which we did, and gladly. As a matter of fact, to me, that was the easiest picture that I ever made, because all I did at night was go home and memorize my lines and never ever think of what I would do with the lines or the scene, ever. Not anything. Just let him tell me what he wanted and hope and pray that I could give him what he wanted.
Did Lubitsch give you line readings on that?
No, not at all. He would just explain what the scene was all about. And then if you weren't doing it, he would then say, this is the character. The character, this is his reaction, should be his reaction, should be this, because this is the way Sam and I saw it, and this and that and the other thing. And then you could always say anything you wanted, but how could you say anything to him? If they spent 21 months taking care of this picture, So this was the joy of this picture.
Happy anniversary.
I'm still too confused. I've got to collect myself.
Give her time to make up her mind, Grandpa.
She could do that on the train.
But what am I going to say to my parents?
Send them a telegram.
You mean sneak out of the house in the middle of the night?
Exactly.
Like burglars?
Like thieves.
We did it once before.
Why shouldn't we do it again? How many people are lucky enough to have the thrill of eloping twice in one marriage?
That's it.
And how many women love their husbands enough to forgive them and take them back and start all over again?
Good.
And how many men love their wives enough to lie and say they're guilty when they've really done nothing wrong?
Careful, Henry, careful.
Well, at least nothing that amounts to very much.
I wouldn't go any further into that. Come, we'd better get started. I'll see if the coast is clear.
Do you remember when the first moment was in your life when you decided that this was what you wanted to do for a living? That you wanted to be an actor?
No, I never made up my mind to become an actor. I was studying law, and I was living in a fraternity house, and some guy who was in the fraternity along with me asked me what I was doing. I said, I'm doing nothing. I'm just sitting here. And he said, they're having tryouts for a play. We're doing The Devil's Disciple, George Bernard Shaw play. He said, why don't you come along and try out? I said, I don't want to try out for any plays. Well, he kept after me and after me. So finally I said, okay. So we walked up a hill to Bascom Hall, and I sat way in the back. And he went down, and I watched a number of people up there reading, parts from The Devil's Disciple. Finally I said, God, these people are so bad. I think I'll just go up and try this. So I walked up, and Troutman it was, who was
William Troutman.
Yeah, who was running the auditions. And I got up and I read the part of Dick Dudgeon. Well, when I got finished, he said something like, and they might be the exact words, he said something like, "My God, where have you been?" And I said something like, I answered him back, something like, "What the hell do you care? What business is it of yours?" Something like that. Well, it was in the character of Dudgeon. Well, anyway, what he meant it to be good, and said that, you know, how nice I was. So I got the part of the lead of Dick Dudgeon in the play.
And in the late 30s, William Troutman, your professor, wrote a story about Don Ameche and me. And the interesting thing was his recollection of his discovery of you, as he often calls it in the story, was actually very close to yours. Troutman says that you literally walked off the stage and you were about to walk out feeling insulted.
Absolutely.
And he said, wait, come back here, Mr. Ameche. He also talks about, it's very interesting when you talk about this, he knew your law professor, whose name was Herbert Page.
It was.
That's right.
That's exactly right. You're well prepared, aren't you?
Well, also, the tone of this piece is so proud.
The only acting class that I ever had was Bill Troutman. The essence of Bill's direction always was just to be the part. Be as simple as you could, be the part, and be sure that your relationships were all. It's almost the Stanislavski system is what it is, which is the only one that I've ever paid any attention to at all.
In 1939, you did the film Midnight. That film opens with the Paramount logo. Up until then, all of your films had been Fox films. That was the first time that Don Ameche made a Paramount movie.
I didn't know that. You mean that was the first time I was loaned out?
Yeah, that was the first time.
I didn't know that.
Up until then, everything had been Fox.
Yes.
And I was just curious as to whether it was different working for a different studio, whether Paramount was a different experience for you, or whether the process was basically the same.
Not to me. It didn't make a particle of difference, really, truthfully. I can remember the picture probably most because of Claudette. Claudette Colbert knew more about the camera probably than a cameraman did. And I learned on that picture, I learned a lot because the cameraman, Charlie, he knew what Claudette knew, so it put Charlie really on his mettle to do what he should do, because he knew if he put a light wrong, Claudette would know it.
She'd know it.
She'd positively know it.
Say, we need some gas.
Where's that railroad station, anyway?
Oh, we passed that. You're gonna sleep at my place.
What was that?
I said you're gonna sleep at my place.
Oh, no, I'm not.
Listen, I've got to drive this cab all night. I'd expect me to keep my mind on my business knowing you're having a roof over your head.
No thanks, Skipper.
Here, here's the key. There's a shirt drying over the bathtub. You can sleep in that. Be out by 7 in the morning. Put this under the mat.
Now, you better keep the key.
Now, don't be a fool.
Oh, I've been a fool too long.
I want to ask you something else about Midnight. As I've read about that film in particular, what I seem to read, even between the lines, is that that film was scripted by Billy Wilder.
It's the first one, I believe.
Right. But that Wilder had the soul of a director, and that he was chafing to some extent under the fact that he couldn't control it, because writers have never had a lot of control.
Undoubtedly.
And that what happened, and Mitch Leisen, from what I read, thought that Wilder's scripts were good but too wordy. So you have a director wanting to cut the writer's script, you have a writer who really wants to direct, and I get the sense that there was a certain tension between the two of them. Was that something that you sensed on the film?
No, I didn't sense it at all. I didn't know that much. I didn't know who Billy Wilder was then. Who did know? You know, that was his first script. And I didn't know that at all, but I believe positively what you're saying happened, because that Mitch never made another picture that was anywhere near this. Now, Wilder went on to make a lot of great pictures, but Mitch never did. So undoubtedly, the friction, tension, whatever caused by Billy probably doing just exactly what you said, going and looking at rushes and coming out and saying, Mitch, you know, this. Yes. Yes, it could put pressure on Mitch that he never had before, and he could handle it, and it was good for him, because it was far and away the best picture he ever made.
Sins of Man, that was your feature film debut. Right after Sins of Man, you did a film called Ramona.
Correct.
And that was a Henry King movie.
Right.
It was also the first time that they had made a film in Technicolor. I would be curious to know if, from an actor's point of view, that technological change impacted on the way you shot a movie.
Yes, but only because of the technicality of shooting in Technicolor. See, from like 10:30 in the morning, or between 10:30 and 11 and 2:30, there wasn't any way that you could shoot a picture without putting nets, and sometimes you'd have maybe 3 nets over to keep the direct sun from coming down, because you couldn't shoot with the direct sun. You know, the shadows would be all wrong. And then they would use big arcs and what they call reflectors. You know, they had silvers and they had golds and they had tins. They had every kind of a thing like pumping light in on you, you know, to get that. Because these nets were keeping the direct sun out, and then they'd have to light you so that it looked like natural lighting. Yeah. From 8:30 in the morning when we started shooting until 10:30, you were all right, because the sun was always at a slant. And then after 2 or 2:15, whatever it might have been, again the sun was all right. But in that period, well, you can imagine, Loretta was the girl in that
Co-star,
picture,
yeah.
and she had blue eyes and very weak eyes. So my numbers might not be exactly right, but it was between 40 and 45 seconds was all that she could stand the light that was being pumped in on us to make these scenes, and her eyes would start to water and have to stop the shooting and then go around and pick it up again. So yes, from that standpoint, it was a tremendous difference from black and white.
You were a product of the studio system, and you were nurtured by the studios. You got a salary. You made the movies that they told you to make. And it sort of has gotten kind of a bad rep, the studio system, lately. What are your thoughts now? Do you think that you were happy to work under that system? Was it difficult? Was it tough? How do you feel about that?
Well, I'll answer it by looking at the records. Is there a Thalberg today? Is there a Louis B. Mayer today? Is there a Zanuck today? Is there a Jack Warner today? Who do we have that you can compare to those people today? Look at the product that we've got. Look at, as compared with, all right, they had the studio system, and that it gave them the leeway of spending the money gambling on the big pictures and making the money out of the B so that they could do that. But is that so terrible? I can't see how this is so wrong, because the B picture was a good product. So they can say that the studio system was horrible. Mickey Rooney came out of it. Judy Garland came out of it. Deanna Durbin came out of it. I compare the studio system to the Renaissance. And then nothing in between the Renaissance until the Impressionists. What happened? What happened? You had Rembrandt and you had Velázquez, 2 greats that come to my mind in that period. God just didn't deal it out. So there is no studio system. You couldn't have a studio system today because you don't have that ability. You don't have Michelangelo, you don't have Leonardo da Vinci, you don't have Raphael, you don't have all these other people that made a contribution at that time. You don't have that.
In 1941, you did a film called That Night in Rio. It followed up a film called Down Argentine Way that you did. Very similar films, musical films. They both had Carmen Miranda in them and so forth.
They did have, one was Brazil, the other one was Argentina. Both of those pictures were highly enjoyable. I don't think I ever made a picture with Alice Faye or Carmen Miranda that wasn't joy.
Alexander's Ragtime Band. It was a sort of a celebration of jazz, really. It was a wonderful thing.
Yes, sure.
But was Irving Berlin on the set of that?
No,
I don't know.
He wasn't on the set a lot, but I had the only original song in the show, so I had to rehearse it with him. And I got to know him better than anybody on the picture did, because I had to rehearse with him every day.
Now it can be told as an inspiration. Every other tale of boy meets girl is just an imitation. The great love story has never been told before. But now it can be told.
When I won the Academy Award, the next morning, the first call that I had was from Irving Berlin, and he was 99, I think, that time when he called me.
That's terrific.
So you can imagine what a thrill that was for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You won an Academy Award for your performance in Cocoon. When you were nominated, was that a surprise for you?
Yes, yes, very much a surprise.
And do you remember do you remember that night when you won the award?
I can remember. I think I can remember almost every single thing of that night, really. I really didn't think I was going to win the Austrian.
Is that Klaus Maria Brandauer?
Yes, Klaus Maria Brandauer. And everyone seemed to think that he was the one that was going to win the award. And so I really didn't expect to win. I can't say that I expected to lose, but I'm sure I didn't expect to win. So it was really a shock to me when they announced my name. And I know exactly what I said. I said, "Oh my God," when I stood up and walked up on the podium. It was an incredible time.
You're a wonderful dancer.
I think so.
I'm very happy, Bess.
Everything's happening so fast.
Are you talking about last night?
No, last night was fine.
Fine?
More than fine. Terrific. I was talking in general.
Well, in general, I think we're having a great time.
Yes, we are.
The attention that I got that night was because of the dress that Cher was wearing. You remember the dress?
Yes.
So
Yes.
It was disturbing when I walked up there and saw her like that, but it turned out to be a good thing, actually.
Yeah. We mentioned Loretta Young before, and you mentioned that you had made Ramona with her. You starred with her 5 times in 5 different films.
That many.
And I wonder, when you work that many times with the same leading lady, I'm curious about the pros and cons.
It never did bother me. Now, maybe other people have a different concept of it all. First of all, I was happily married. The camera's so sharp, if I really, deep within me, didn't like Loretta Young or anybody else, Rosalind Russell or whoever it was that I was playing, if I really didn't like them, that camera would pick that up. So I was never allowed the latitude of either liking or disliking a girl, a woman with whom I'm performing. I had to like that person. Now, my admiration for a performer because of her great ability to perform in front of a camera, that was a different thing. But the liking, the really almost being in love with a woman, because if you didn't, that camera would surely pick that up. So I had no latitude in whether or not I was going to like a girl or not like a girl with whom I was playing with. The situation demanded that I just had to, honest to God, be in love with this woman. And to my knowledge, I never did do it wrong, I don't think. That was one of the things that I think was a hard job in pictures, because all of them weren't lovely people. Loretta happened to be a very lovely woman and very nice woman, very gifted.
There was another Loretta Young picture talking about love called Love is News.
Mm-hmm.
I think that was the first time I saw you with the mustache on the screen.
That might be.
That became part of your trademark.
Yes,
the
it
mustache.
did. It did.
Why do you think that it started at that point? Was there any particular reason?
Sure, I was supposed to look older than Ty Power. And actually I was a little older, but I was only about 5 years older than Ty, but I was his boss in the picture. I should have been 20 years older than he. That was the reason that we put the mustache on.
For a lot of people, I think Don Ameche and Alexander Graham Bell are almost inseparable.
They are.
After that film came out, and people loved that movie, for years they would call telephones Ameche's. That's true, isn't it?
Sure, it is true. There were 2 things that happened to create that. The war was on, and the entertainment was of such an incredibly important thing in the lives of the people, especially in the South Pacific. And they weren't getting very many pictures. Really, the studios were not sending them out there. And what pictures went out there, they kept showing over and over and over and over and over. So he might have seen the picture 20 times, 25 times. One night the phone rang, and he picked up the phone, and the guy said he wanted to speak to somebody, and the guy yells over, he says, "Hey, Jim, you're wanted on the Ameche." And he put the phone down. The other, and probably the most important event that happened in keeping this alive, and keeping the story alive of me connected with the phone, was Fred Allen. See, Fred, in that little program, the radio program they had the half hour, he had that group that did something every week.
It's called Allen's Alley.
Yeah, that's
right.
Exactly what I'm talking about. Well, I think it was for 18 straight weeks. He had something about Don Ameche on the telephone for 18 straight weeks. And Fred called me and asked me whether or not I wouldn't come back and go on the show. And I said, Fred, I was doing Chasing Sanborn at the time. You know,
it
there's
was
no way
competitive.
that
Yeah.
I could not go back and see him. And I hate it because I really love Fred. Such a beautiful human being. But that probably was the most influential thing of all.
Mr. Watson! I want to. It talks! Mr. Bell! Mr. Bell, I heard you. I heard your voice. Then hurry, I'm burned. But I heard you. Your voice through the wire. I understood what you said. What did I say? Tell me. You said, Mr. Watson, come here. I want you. That's right. Well, what did you do? I put 2 drops of sulfuric acid in the water. That made the water a conductor for the electric current transmitting the voice. Hooray! Hooray! We're in the telephone business now!
You know, one of the things that Troutman wrote about in this article, Lo, those many years ago, I mean, it's literally over a half-century ago, he said that he saw a brashness in Don Ameche. He said this with great affection and respect. He said, never an arrogance, he said, but a tremendous confidence that he could get the job done. That was the thing that drew him to you as a performer, that you took charge and you had a wonderful sense of self-confidence without ever being overbearing about it or pretentious about it. And he said, I think, he said, Don Ameche believes that he has a guardian angel. He said, and I think he really does. I don't know.
I do, as a matter of fact.
You do have a guardian angel.
I'm sure I know I do. I'm sure of it.
Because it just sounds to me when, for example, when this second career, actually it may have been a third career, started with Trading Places, maybe that was your guardian angel. Maybe it was your guardian angel on Oscar night that picked out Cher's dress.
It's so true. So true. You know, who would think? When I walked up and saw that, who would think that this is an advantage for me that she was dressed that way? You know, there's no way in the world you could think
everyone's
things like
looking
that.
there and not at me.
Absolutely.
And that, yeah.
I don't have a supreme confidence. I don't believe. Every job that I've ever taken, I thought I could do.
This series is part of a broad program in adult education produced by the Center for the Motion Picture Arts. Viewers are welcome to join our classes, seminars, and film festival cruises. For further information, write Reflections, 1202 Lexington Avenue, New York, 10028.